Hello, everyone. We are Access Classics, the outreach initiative of UCD's School of Classics. Just to introduce everyone, I'm Christopher Farrell. I'm a lecturer in the School of Classics at UCD. These are my colleagues, Dr. Bridget Martin and Tasneem Filaih. Bridget and Tasneem, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Hi, my name is Tasneem. I'm the school manager here in the School of Classics in UCD.
Hi, I am Bridget Martin and I teach Greek here in UCD in the School of Classics.
And together over the last 2 years now, the three of us have been working to launch first a pilot program on offering outreach where we trialed school visits. And then during the process of the last year in which we've been sort of locked down and dealing with COVID, we've also been trialing distance engagement with schools and creating resources that we hope will help teachers and students and just interested members of the general public engage with the subject of classics and ancient history more broadly. And so I think perhaps not surprisingly, we think that the subject is particularly important. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask everyone why they're interested in classics and just to say a little bit about our backgrounds and how we came to the discipline, particularly because all three of us actually come from quite different backgrounds and have come to the discipline in different ways. And I'll start with you, Tasneem, especially because you're the newest to the subject of classics. Obviously, you've studied English, you've studied Irish and Irish history, and you came to us from science. So what was your first impression of classics as a discipline? And why do you think that it's important enough that everyone should be able to learn about it, having never studied it sort of formally yourself at school or undergraduate level?
I think that my first impression, like you said, I have a background in history and English from studying in UCD, and I went on to do a master's in Irish history, but I had no idea or no concept about classics. I knew that you could study Latin and Greek, and that was as much as I knew from undergrad. I didn't know about being able to study myth or being able to study, different what's called civilisations and stuff like that is studied in the School of Classics here, like such as Greek and Roman civilizations. And it was when I was interviewed for the job at the School of Classics, that's when I was first introduced to classics. My impression was that it was amazing and that I was really surprised that I hadn't been introduced sooner. It was amazing because I had my interview actually in the museum here in the School of Classics, and I couldn't believe that I had gone through my undergraduate degree and my master's degree not knowing that just above me was this absolutely amazing museum with amazing artifacts that really showed the span of the study of classics. I had no idea that ancient Egypt, places that I had been, such as Luxor, such as Cairo, those histories were also studied under this subject. So all of this was very much brand new information. It surprised me, but it also excited me to learn something completely different, even though I wouldn't be exactly working in the field.
Yeah, and obviously you work in the field with us every day, and you're very vital. And we'll talk in a little bit about the podcast series that you've launched as well, and how you've been working with some of our recent graduates to create short recordings on the Greek gods, and also you've been studying about the discipline and sort of starting to read around it because we've infected you with our passion for for the subject, obviously. And I mean, Bridget, I know you've said before that you have a very similar experience in the sense that classics was something that was almost entirely new to you, if not completely new to you, when you came to UCD as a student yourself and began third level education.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I went to what would now be called a DESH school. We didn't have classics at all. I had no idea it was a subject. It was completely outside of my frame of reference. So I came to university to study English, and I had to pick two other subjects to go with it. So it was pure chance that I was not fully prepared with the three subjects I wanted to do. So it was just through reading the brochure and figuring out what else I wanted to do. And I still remember, I have such a clear memory of reading the brochure and finding out what classics was. And it just floored me that it was a subject. I couldn't understand that somebody would just tell me all of this information, that this combined was a subject. It just completely blew me away. And throughout the 3 years of my undergrad, I very quickly moved away from English, and classics was very much my focus. And that was my great love, really. And it's just a fact that if I hadn't read that brochure, if I'd come very sure of what subjects I wanted to do, I might never have known what classics was. And for me, that is a huge part of what we are doing and why we are reaching out to schools. A big part of what we do is to get to those schools, to those students who don't know about it. So it isn't a case that we have all these people who will turn around and say, classics, never heard of it, must be classical music. So to kind of prevent that from happening. So I do have very much like Tasneem then, that huge gap to begin with, that there was just no knowledge of it. And then this wonderful just enlightenment of what classics was and what it could tell us and the perspectives it could show us. But I know, Chris, that you have a different background again, that it was something that you had before you came to university.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm similar in the sense that I didn't really study classics formally at school because it just wasn't part of the curriculum, other than we would get a little bit of ancient history and our world history, which you do in sort of your second year of high school. So sort of when you're probably about 15, and then also earlier, you do a little bit when you're sort of in primary school, where you learn a little bit about Egypt and Mesopotamia and the Greeks and the Romans, and some random facts maybe about Hannibal and his elephants and things like that. But for me, it was sort of, I went to a Catholic school, and they taught us Latin, they taught us church Latin. And when I was going to university, I had every intention of studying history and politics, because those were the things that I was really most interested in. And I gravitated towards classics initially because I wanted to start with history as early as I could go. And I was really interested in ancient history from the little taster bits that I had done in school. So that's also kind of why it's important to me to say, I think it makes a difference that if you go in and you introduce kids to the subject and they have an idea of what it is, it kind of opens that curiosity, and you realize it is a possibility. So I started taking Greek history in my first trimester of university. And I just kept coming back, in part because I had really great teachers, and it was a very small school. It's similar to kind of what we had at UCD, in the sense that there weren't that many members of staff, and, there was a vibrant student community. But we just enjoyed kind of approaching the material. And then as I was going deeper into the modern history and the political thought that I was doing, you start to see how all of these things tie into the classics, and how I wanted to start to be able to deconstruct this whole narrative of you have to go back to these texts, because I enjoyed them, but I didn't fully understand why in the modern era people were saying, well, in order to understand this, you have to have read Plato and things like that, because you're thinking they are such different worlds and there are these amazing similarities. But at the same time, for me, it was like going back to the myths that I had read casually as a kid. And you start to realize, like to your point, Bridget, about the interdisciplinary value. So if you like literature, if you like studying language, if you enjoy any of these other subjects like I do about politics or philosophy or religion, you can study them all within one discipline. And so greedily, when I finished my degree and I was thinking what I would do, I wanted to follow up more. And actually it was sort of, I thought, okay, I want to be able to specialize in classics, but at the same time, I wasn't sort of mentally prepared to think I would go on to do a PhD. And it just sort of that I haven't really been able to sort of sate my curiosity. So that I kind of, again, unintentionally came to this subject, even though I sort of knew that it existed. But similarly in America, you can't really study it all that formally, except outside of a handful of schools to that. And ironically enough, Latin, which is what I did first, I moved so far away from that because I love Greek culture much more. And I know that to that point, Bridget, for instance, you started studying Greek like me at university. And that's actually the thing that you're, I think, most passionate about, is sort of the study of the language and the literature, and then working on that, not only in translation, but with the original language.
Yeah, definitely. And it was far enough into my time at university. It was just at master's level that I began to learn the language. And I think partly was that I found it so difficult, and there's kind of a perverse enjoyment in finding something so difficult and figuring it out. So it was just something that I could never quite shake. I just loved the language, and the fact that it just showed so much in a text that can be lost in translation. And you could so easily delve into one word for all the afternoon and just think about this word and look it up and find the different uses. It was just, again, such a revelation. So even though I did at that stage just love classics and what it could give me, especially the literature, like to come to the language later again, I think I was more prepared at a later stage as well for it. If I had tried Greek maybe in the first year of my undergrad, I'm not sure that maybe I would have kept going with it, but it has become the thing that I very much love best about it, just the insight it can give and the beautiful patterns in it. And it's just a wonderful thing. And again, it's something that in Access Classics, when we go to the schools virtually or in person, I am constantly giving them Greek just to try to subliminally get people to think about it and to see it's not impossible, that it's an alphabet. And once you get over that, it's a whole world, a whole way into classics.
What I find is when you both kind of introduce people to Greek, I mean, I would feel like really self-conscious, or I'd feel really nervous about, you know, like obviously we've heard kind of these words, whether it be from American television, such as alpha and beta, but like these are just kind of, you know, like to actually like be able to look and see them physically and, you know, kind of make up words, and like for it to be fun and accessible, that's truly amazing to, you know, to experience. Because even I kind of find myself going in with the students and like learning these basic words that I would have absolutely, I would feel extremely intimidated with before, but it brings that accessibility that just that is generally not there, especially when you're kind of talking about you before, before you did your undergraduate, reading that brochure, or if you're to talk to me 4 years ago, before I even knew the subject existed, before going for the job in classics.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the interesting things that happens when we go to the schools. And obviously, at first, I think people are very overwhelmed by the idea that the alphabet is different. And what we do is we ask them to sort of transliterate their names phonetically into the Greek alphabet, and we play kind of a decoding game to like, so to your point, Bridget and Tasneem, sorry, when Bridget and I are talking to them, and we start with words that they might know. So things like democracy or philosophy or drama or theater, and we show them the kind of the Greek roots for that, but they kind of decode them into the Latin alphabet. And then what we also find that they actually really like and engage with is when they can kind of recognize the letters of the words on objects, so pottery or coins or things like that. And that we find is then like a big barrier lifted in terms of like also what students coming into university think of as, oh, Greek seems too intimidating because I don't know the alphabet. And once you get past that, then obviously, to Bridget's point, there's a world of opportunity that you can do. And obviously in Ireland, it's something that not a lot of students are able to study before they get to third level education. And there's this never ending circle in sense that if you don't know that it exists and you don't know that you can study it, then how do you actually begin? And so that's also like a big part of what we've actually been trying to do over the last few years. And so we launched a pilot program where initially we visited a range of schools. And what we found is that actually, regardless of the school that we've been to so far, the experience has been the same, and that we've gotten a good uptake and response from the students. And I think it shows that there is an appetite for doing this, regardless of what the background of the students or the school is. even if it is just a bit of fun and just for awareness, so that if they are going and they encounter these things in terms of the neoclassical architecture of Ireland or the national collection, that they realize that this is something that they can learn more about, and that they don't have to go to a specific school to do that. And that they, if they want to, when they come to third level, they can take a class for fun, or they can, like Bridget and I, they can actually go on and they can take some of these subjects as well. And I think another part of that that we should talk about is the website, because obviously over the last year in particular, we haven't been able to go out and visit schools in the same way because of lockdown. And that's created challenges, but it's also created opportunities for us in terms of how we've invested our time and how we can potentially reach other people. Because one thing that we've done is we have a desire, of course, to reach any school that wants to interact with us on the island of Ireland. And we've also collaborated with partners in the UK and further afield. But a lot of the places that reach out to us, understandably, are based in Dublin. And so what we've been able to find is that through Zoom and through the creation of the website, which you can access through accessclassics.ie, we are able to actually create videos and resources. So I wanted to ask both of you about the resources that you've spent a considerable amount of time kind of steering effort towards. And I'll start with you, Tasneem, in terms of the podcast series, which is something that you've been really passionate about in terms of producing. And you've sort of enlisted a number of recent graduates from the school to sort of launch our pilot podcast program. Do you want to say something about the introduction to the gods and goddesses?
Absolutely. I've been, like you said, Chris, I've really enjoyed producing the podcasts and working with past students, current students, and hopefully, there'll be more cross collaboration. But yeah, no, I've really enjoyed producing this a series on ancient Greek myth, because it's very interesting. It's very interesting to learn as somebody like you, Chris, when you were reading about the ancient Greek gods back when you were younger, and being introduced to them firsthand through this series. And this is a really accessible series that is currently on our website. It's under 5 minutes. So like, again, it's just to get people who want to get out of the house for their daily walks, just something to listen to, or something really accessible just to, pass the time. So I think it just gives you a really nice snapshot and a really nice bite-sized introduction to just very interesting stories of the Greek gods. So yeah, I've absolutely really enjoyed it, and really encourage people to come on board and listen to them.
Yeah, and you can find them under a specific tab on the website. And also what you'll find in addition to that is that there's a series of podcasts that were created through a module in the past by one of our colleagues, Dr. Joe Day, and as part of the UCD Classical Museum. And they talk also about some of the objects and the artifacts there. So if you're interested to hear about what some of our students have been doing and to learn more about the museum, the podcast section is also a great place to sort of check out. And so far we've had sort of kind of weekly installments of those, and you can catch up on a number of the series of the gods and goddesses. Absolutely. And Bridget, you spent a lot of time, especially between the first lockdown and over the summer, putting together the transition year unit, in part, I think, because obviously students and teachers had expressed an interest in reaching out to us for students in that age group and educational area. And do you want to say a bit about the transition year unit? And again, you can find that up on the website.
Sure, thanks, Chris. So yeah, when we did originally reach out to schools, we did get a lot of interest from transition year. So the teachers looking for something to kind of engage their students. Often the teachers would have done classics themselves in university, and they wanted to bring a subject they love to the students, but they didn't quite know how to do it. So during the first lockdown, especially, we came up with the idea that if we want to reach these schools, if we want to reach schools that don't currently have classics, but give something to the teachers as well, so we're not just landing it all on them, that they have to produce this work. So we decided to make a transition year unit, which is really quite extensive. It comes with a very well, not a very long manual, but about 80 pages, I think, that takes you through lots of different lesson plans and points for discussion. And there is also the PowerPoint to go with it that's easily printable. So they are both on the website here, and they're available for free to all teachers. So this was really our way of getting to those schools that don't have classics but would like to introduce it in some way to their students. But it's also, it can be used for students who have met classics before, because it doesn't overlap with the junior or leaving cert. And it has been approved by the National Council for Curriculum and Assessment, so it can currently be used by all schools who would like to do so. And we will produce, as we go along, more resources to go with the unit, and we will add to it based on teacher and student feedback, just to make sure it remains accessible and remains helpful to the students and the teachers. And hopefully through this, we will get out the word about classics and introduce more and more people to it. So that is our hope. And then, Chris, I know you have been working quite hard as well, like Tasneem, on producing videos for our website. And if you want to tell us a little bit about those.
Sure. And, in the past, for instance, at UCD, and Trinity also participates in this, traditionally, we've alternated years. There's the CAIT Lecture Day, which is designed for students who would participate in the Leaving Certificate. And there are different streams, there are different topics, and they're usually about 45, 50-minute lectures live on campus. And it gives students an opportunity to come to a university environment and to sort of hear about classics that is related to what they're studying if they're doing that at school. But also it's an opportunity for us, I think, to transition also into kind of a virtual platform. This year, obviously, we couldn't go ahead with that in person. So what we've done is we've started to create some videos, and you'll find initially that there are 3 up so far, and they all range between about 25 and 30 minutes. And they touch on specific topics about the current, the Leaving Cert curriculum. But you'll find that if you go up to the webpage also, and this is something that we're planning on doing sort of longer term, you'll find there are various tabs for the junior cycle and the senior cycle. And we've played an important part over the last 2 years in trying to help advise on the incoming curriculum, and also looking for ways to sort of support the new junior cycle curriculum. So I'd say stay tuned and sort of engage with the website if you're interested. And even if you're not taking this as a subject at school, if you know a teacher, if you know a student, or just someone of the public who'd be interested in watching these short videos, they're designed to be accessible. You can find them on YouTube, or you can watch them on our website in particular. But you'll find that over the next couple of years, our ambition, our hope is that we're going to be creating a large number of these sorts of videos, materials like the podcast, supplementing and adding to the transition year unit, and more in terms of just making the subject of classics more accessible to students, not only in Ireland, which is our primary objective, but across the world, really. Anyone who wants to visit the website or has an interest in the subject. And we make these objects or these materials, again, as Bridget said, freely available. They're created by the 3 of us and by our colleagues and by, as we said before, former students. So if you really want to sort of find out more, just hop on and visit the website, again, accessclassics.ie. But thank you very much for having us, and we look forward to sort of speaking with you or answering any questions you have, either indirectly via email or in person on the panel in the coming week. So thank you very much, and thank you, Bridget and Tasneem, for your time and help in putting together this video.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.